everyone. So excited. Not only because it's Monday with Carl and Con. You all know them individually, collectively, and now we're all together today to bring as much value add as we can. It's really focused on strategy and with the key word being relevance, which I believe, especially as relates to LinkedIn, is so very important because you can get so caught up in the numbers and forget what's really the foundation for those numbers. So chat's wide open. Depend on chat to keep us as relevant as we can and bring as many quality takeaways to the show that you can apply going forward. So with that, I'll turn it over to Carl, who is our every other Wednesday and now is starting to show up more and more. And then we'll turn it over to Con, who is such a valuable resource for the group as well as the whole LinkedIn population. And so happy to be able to build and elevate everybody's profile. So Carl, tell us what's going on and what your first thoughts on relevancy are.
Well, last week was a very busy week where I had my own show on Tuesday and was a guest on your show twice. And then I was a speaker at a national conference on Thursday. So I had a great time at the conference. It was one of those conferences where people go, it's so much fun to talk to people who understand what you're saying without going through 10 minutes of explanation and education and so forth. And I think it's interesting because we were talking about crowdfunding and crowdfunding as a form of investment where you can go to anyone, anywhere, and ask them for money. Instead of being limited to just the very few that the laws restrict you to who have high net worth. And the difference that I was getting across is a small business may know nobody that is of high net worth. And even if they do know them, they may not be a match, they may not be funding, and there's no relevance. And to the point. So working with their customers, people who are buying their products or services, we at least have a starting point for a conversation about funding because they're buying the products or services. Now, it may not grow, may not be large enough to move the needle, but at that point, we at least are engaged enough to have that first conversation and get started. So I'm going to kick off my comments here Monday with that point that if you're raising money and there's no relevance, you need to be talking to somebody else.
Oh, I think that's so absolutely true and important because we always come back to time efficiency as being one of the biggest resources we need to be protective of. And if you're not fishing in the right hole, you're probably not going to be catching a lot of fish, or the fish are really out there to catch. With that, happy to turn it over to Con, and also want to mention Con's book, the Engagement Blueprint, which just came out. And if you're really interested in really diving a little deeper and getting some quality information that you can actually take to work and make things happen with, I'd say the Engagement Blueprint is it. So with that, Con, what's new and exciting?
Well, happy Monday. Good morning, gentlemen. Good morning to our audience. I know we're launching into another exciting week. I'm going to piggyback on our word of the day, and I'm going to piggyback on some of the opening comments from Carl. I think relevance is such an important thing for us to consider. I mean, I look at, for example, Carl, all of the events that you did last week, the daily events that Don does, all of the big sessions that I do, whether it's speaking from the big stages or to more smaller groups through workshops or group coaching events. To me, I had that question from a participant, from someone that was looking to kind of launch their career a few weeks ago. And they asked me that question: how do I start? What do I need to focus on? And I said, my answer is very simple, that when somebody asks me to speak about a topic, I don't ask what the topic is. I ask who the audience is. So we always start our communication, our events, our presentations by answering the simple question, who's my audience? Because once you understand who your audience is, then you can make the topic relevant to them. Because unless it matters to them, unless it's relevant to them, they're not going to give you their attention. They're not going to be as engaged as you want them to be. That's how you start connecting with people. That's how you start getting your message across to people. That's how you start serving people. When you understand who your audience is, what their needs are, and what their goals are.
Hey, that is what a terrific way to tip this thing off. And you know what it reminds me of is relevance is a two-way street.
Mhm.
Too many people focus on, are you relevant to me, as opposed to, am I relevant to you? Right? Because there's an assumption that I'm okay, but maybe you're not. Right? And I think that, you know, people have to get to the point where it's a really good match before you can start talking.
Mhm.
Right? Where it really fits and you have something to really dive into.
Mhm.
And the other thing about relevance is it usually makes things for more interesting, right? Because when you're talking about something that someone holds dear to their heart,
Mhm.
they're listening a little closer. They know that it could have some value because it is to their point and their interest. And it's also about personalized, right? Because the more you can personalize it, the more relevant it can be.
Mhm.
And too many people generalize, and it's a great way of catching a big group, but not impacting that group. And really, at the end of the day, it's what is the takeaway? You know, I invested an hour or whatever time into this opportunity. Was it justified? And your admission ticket to your next event is based on the satisfaction from your last event, if you're going to build and build well. So we've got Dennis here. Dennis is just a great guy, always here. A great way to start our week, to hear you three to be more relevant. And then says agree engagement and so much better and happier than divorcement. Absolutely. And Carl, everybody's smiling already, and we're only 7 minutes and 30 seconds into it. So we're doing something right.
I was hoping Dennis was going to be in the audience today because I got a fortune cookie last night that just reminded me of him immediately. And the fortune went like this. It said, success is made out of cans. You cannot succeed out of cannots.
Well, that's a good one.
Uh, no, it is really interesting when I see an entrepreneur make a pitch for an investment, and all I hear is me, me, me. You know, they're talking about themselves, and it comes across as disconnect. You know, to the person they're talking to. I don't know whether the person they're talking to even cares or is listening. And I certainly have no idea if they might invest in that particular small business. And so to Khan's point, you should start with the audience in mind. Am I relevant to this audience? And more importantly, do I really fit the needs of this particular audience? And at the end of the day, you know, I take the position that everybody is selfish. And this isn't used in the bad sense, because if you don't feed yourself and if you don't put a roof over your head and you don't do some of these other things to take care of yourself, then you're not going to be around tomorrow. You're not going to survive. These are all, you know, built into us in, you know, over time. And somehow this translates into working with your customers, your clients, or with investors. Because if you're not helping them satisfy their needs, why should they talk to you? There's nothing for them to gain other than maybe, you know, some time at the cooler, you know, talking or discussing how some of our sports teams are great and some of them are very disappointing. And yeah, you can get some social enjoyment out of that. But from a business standpoint, you're saying, I'm going to check my watch. I've only got so much time today. I need to be talking to those people to whom I'm relevant. And more importantly, to those to whom I'm so relevant that they need me to do what they're going to do. Because at that point, then we have a basis for a relationship. We can be mutually beneficial to each other. And then we are at the height of relevance.
Yeah, that's so important. And I think listening is key because, as much as you may assume something, until you get that feedback, until you get that audience reaction, until you get that buy-in, you've got some more room to move. And today there's so much dynamic change that happens so fast, is you're liable to lose your position to either something more relevant or something that stays relevant. And I think too many people take too much for granted, and they forgot what it was on the way up, and they don't apply it as they keep going forward, because you have to make everybody feel important. You have to create that atmosphere where there's safety, but also value. And people sense that. And some people do come in with a canned approach. This is my 30-minute speech and I do it every time. And, that might have worked in the past, but it's not working anymore. So change is important. Listening, feeling what you're seeing and hearing, and then adjusting as you're going. So, Con, you're very experienced at speaking and connecting. Where do you see opportunities going forward?
Well, it's a great question, Don, and I'm going to start. Before I answer that question, I'm going to dedicate a few seconds to our friend Dennis as well, and kind of remind him that the difference between major surgery and minor surgery is that if it's on me, it's major. If it's on you, it's minor. And so that speaks to the heart of relevance. And if it's something that is important to me, that resonates with me, that addresses my needs, my aspirations, that's relevant. That's important. That's something that I want to pay attention to. Now, as somebody who communicates and speaks and teaches and coaches for a living, a big part of my understanding is that many of the principles that I talk about are unwavering. They're consistent. They're as consistent as this show. They show up every day. And from that perspective, that doesn't change. But the needs of my audience may evolve. They may change. So from that perspective, I have to, at the same time, be consistent in my message for the important things, while at the same time being willing to adapt and making the content and the message more relevant to whom I'm speaking. And that is a key part of our role as leaders, as communicators, as people that want to impact others and serve others. We have to do it in such a way that it speaks to them. Otherwise, you might as well be talking a different language. Because if it doesn't resonate, if it doesn't break through, then it's not relevant to them. They're going to tune it out. In a world and in a place where everything is competing for our attention, when we have so many things that are just on the fringes, just poking at us and saying, hey, look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me. It's very difficult to break through that. And the way to do that is, again, through relevance, is making sure that you are broadcasting at a frequency that the person that needs to hear your message is well tuned into. The more you can adjust that frequency so it resonates with them, the more relevant you're going to be.
Excellent point. And you illustrate it so well. And I think it also lends itself to differentiating and distinguishing style versus substance, right? So your substance stays true to your principles and to what your belief is, but your style can adjust to whoever you're with, right? So if you're talking to a plumbers convention, there's got to be something in there that plumbers can relate to, right?
Right.
If you look at concerts and everybody says hello Buffalo when they open their show, right? Well, they don't say that when they go to Detroit, right? But they bring the audience in because they want to be looked at as part of them.
Mm-hmm.
Because the more distance you put between you and them, the harder the communication is to really impact.
Yeah.
And, everybody's proud of something, and if you could find where their pride is, you can open the door to a lot of great ideas, because people say, well, he or she is just like me, or they're into my stuff. So obviously I should probably be more into them. So, Carl, how do you change with the environment, with the audience as you present?
Well, I take an approach with each funding project that it's unique. I don't assume that the same group of investors with this broker or this, funding group are going to step up each and every time. And this is one of the things that was repeated over and over again at the crowdfunding conference, is that you can go to a platform, you can list up, you can have the greatest song and dance, and if you don't bring people with you to the platform, then you're basically talking to yourself and nothing's going to happen. And so as you start each fundraising campaign or each journey, you kind of have to do like Bilbo Baggins. You have to pick up a wizard and a couple doors and other people with different skill sets who make up your entire team for your adventure, so that you have all the talent you need to do whatever it is you're going to do. And these adventures are different. If we're going down to the beach, well, maybe I need a lifeguard, or I need some suntan lotion. But if I'm going to the mountains, we're going to be putting on boots and mosquito gear and other kinds of things. So we naturally will adapt to our environment, but sometimes in the business world, we're not quite as sensitive to everybody around us. And this was part of an article I posted in my daily newsletter, Instant Funding, about building your team. There's so many people who are part of your team, but a lot of them don't know it. They don't understand your relevance to them and vice versa. We talked on this show about transactional mindsets and how we just kind of treat people like objects instead of relationships. And if we understand everybody that we're working with and how we are relevant to them, sometimes we may need to show or explain or educate them on that relevance, but that changes the nature of the relationship, because they're going, oh, now if they succeed, then I succeed. And that means now that my success is in their self-interest. And now we have relevance to them, where before they may not think of us that way. And it's an interesting thing as small businesses grow up, how well are they building their relationships with everybody around them, who could and should be part of a team as they would define it.
Yeah, that's important. And I think, we're all teachers in our own way, so how are we getting the message out so people can gain as much relevance and value from it? But also, how do you make it a win-win-win situation where when you're done with a speech, you come out better for it, more experienced, learned a little nuance, learned another way of approaching things. Have to bring Carl back in. I think that's because why not get more? And I think that's the key, is how do you create more value with the same amount of time and effort? How do you set yourself apart knowing, hey, this person's real. I'm going to learn something here. And anytime you can go in with a mindset of something more positive, a higher level of expectation, you're probably going to reach that level. And I think a lot of it is, how do you lay the groundwork? How do you pave the road? And I think through shows like this, through newsletters, just being there, just showing up, just being consistent. And people, that's why McDonald's and some of these franchises are so successful for so long, is no matter where you go, hopefully in this country, the same McDonald's will be what you're going to get. And people don't like surprises, good or bad. It is a little disruptive and it's unsettling. So, Con, how do you keep your name out there in a way that only fortifies your audience?
I show up at Don's daily sessions here. That's how I keep relevant.
You're too good, Don. That's a way. Go ahead.
That was a soft pitch, my friend. No. I mean, this is a big part of it. I mean, being able to position yourself in a place. I mean, a storefront, that from back in your retail days, from back in the days when you ran brick and mortar businesses, location, location, location. Are you in the right places so your audience can see you? So, for example, in our world today, in the world that is so full of platforms and social media opportunities and everything else, are you showing up in a place that is relevant for your audience? That's the big thing right now. For example, it does me no good to engage with a platform where my potential customers, the people that I want to serve, the people that I want to connect with, don't go to. It's like you were saying, fishing in the wrong hole. I mean, that doesn't make sense. So being relevant from that perspective is showing up in the places where your audience is, connecting with them from that perspective, making sure that you are presenting yourself and making yourself available where they will be. So you are top of mind. And that is so important in our days. I mean, back to the topic that we were talking about, the previous elements that we were talking about with Carl. I mean, I was in tune with something that he was saying about the fact that when you are, as a business owner, are making a pitch and it's all about you, you're not going to be as successful. You're not going to get the advantage. You're forcing your audience, your potential client, to do all the heavy lifting and thinking. They have to weed through what you're saying to make the connection to what's relevant to them. You know, in the past, I used to spend a lot more time doing sales training courses and things like that. Although in my mind, I explain to my clients, I don't do sales training. I do buying facilitation training. And the difference between that is when you are able to communicate to your clients what it is that's important to them, what's relevant from your product or service for them, they are more than willing to buy. Nobody likes to be sold on. Nobody likes to be on that receiving end of that proverbial guy with the plaid jacket and the snake oil trying to pitch you and forcing you into one of those situations that you really don't want to be in. But everybody loves to shop. Everybody loves to buy something that is relevant to them to fulfill their needs from that perspective. And when you can find a product that can really make an impact on your life and your business, you're going to say yes. So the job of every good, quote unquote, salesperson is not to sell, but to help their client buy and show them, make the connection between what the person's needs are, understanding that, asking the right questions and listening truly to what the person needs and wants, and then connecting the benefits of what you offer, not just the features, but the benefits of what you offer, and packaging it in a way that makes sense to the person. They go, well, of course, you've brought the solution. If you can solve my problem, why wouldn't I buy? If I can see that in a way that makes sense to me, why wouldn't I buy? I mean, any logical person would say yes to that. And it makes your life and their life a lot easier. And that is better for everybody.
Absolutely. And, talking about retail, when you look at locations, a lot of it is ingress and egress, right? And if you can't get in easily, you can't get out easily. It's going to restrict the flow because people are naturally lazy in certain ways, and they don't want to work too hard at something that is involved with you. So having easy access, familiarity, something that creates a comfort level, because a lot of people are willing to pull the trigger on a purchase, but it's always that what's in the back of their head that's holding them back. And retail is always easy because you could always talk directly to the customer and say, what is your challenge, right? What's holding you back? And somebody might say it's a family decision, got to talk to my wife. Well, that's a thing you should do because you're never going to circumvent that. If someone says, I don't have enough money, well, we're not going to make a sale today, And at that point, you can share, well, there's different ways to finance it, or maybe you can buy a little today. Most of the time is I'm not sure. And what I found is, well, take it home, use it. If you're not happy, bring it back. And they never bring it back, typically, And if they do, it's okay because in most cases, they're not overusing it. Got a few more comments. Dennis, agree we should not assume. It does make an ass of you and me. Listen and learn will help us earn. Agree, show up, not off. Well, here's a big one from Peter Clark. Good morning, gentlemen. Great conversation. You cannot experience anything if you're not on the same frequency, vibrational level, whether it's business or personal. You can only tune in with someone by being on the same frequency. The key is to keep your frequency consistent and true for you. If you're also a radio station, you can't change your frequency every day to chase audiences. Audiences find you by tuning into your frequency. Just a thought. Cheers. Great thought. Appreciate taking the time and effort to put something so comprehensive up here. And, it's working what you have, not changing with the wind, because that's unpredictable. If someone's a country singer today and a rock singer tomorrow, it kind of mixes everybody up. And, the thing is you always have to work at your craft also. People need the time in order to do that. Dennis comes back with, agree, listening is at least twice as important talking. That's why we have 2 ears and only 1 mouth. And it's not easy for good talkers. And it's not easy for talkers that like to hear themselves talk, and there is a point where you have to have discipline, and you don't want to take up all the oxygen in the room, because, I also found long-winded whatever gets tiring, gets boring, or doesn't respect people's intelligence. It's like, I got it at the first run through. I didn't need the second, third reason why. And I think that's another way of not really being totally connected with your audience. And, you got to be able to take it as well as give it, and a lot of people are thin-skinned, get a little bit of criticism and overreact and try to overpower somebody. And that doesn't work. And I think little things done right compound over time. So, Carl, a lot of different perspectives today.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that I've seen, particularly as we've had discussions about building communities and relationships, is that a lot of times we are more relevant to some people than we realize or they realize, and yet for some reason we're hanging out in the same space and without having a good understanding of why we're together or what we're trying to do. It's like if you're going to put your product or service out there, who can give you feedback on that? Well, your spouse, your family, your friends, your team, such as it is. But I find a lot of people that I should be asking, I don't ask. I should have said everyone I wrote a check to this month who would like me to write a check to them again next month. Maybe I should ask their opinion because that from their standpoint, I'm relevant to them. Maybe not that much because I'm not writing the big checks. But if my success in selling my services is something that's going to help them move forward, maybe I should ask them for their voice, chip in and tell me what I could do better. And just expand it. We've talked about frequencies. Well, maybe our bandwidth may be too narrow or too directional. If we're going to stay on that metaphor, maybe we need to expand it a little bit in broadcast. But not so much, because I do agree we can't be everything to everybody. But we do really need to know where we bring value, where people gain value from us. And if they don't understand it, we have to be prepared to help them understand that in their terms, in their words, in their place. As Con was describing it, if they understand that they're getting a benefit from working with you, why wouldn't they work with you?
Well, I think that lends itself to promoting interaction. Fortunately, on live streams, you get interaction spontaneously in the moment. If you're talking to a large audience, you can't have everybody raising their hand every time they have a thought or a response to it. You can gauge it by how many smiles are in the audience, how much applause you may be getting, how much interest you may be having. But everybody's helping each other if they're acting in the most, let's say, beneficial way for each other to share something, right? Because every comment was based on something that was said or heard or seen here that launched a response to it. And that's why I think honoring everybody who does participate really rewards people to participate. Right. So if someone says, hey, I got a great comment, I say, well, I think that's wrong. you're going to make people standoffish, and they're going to find another place, because although we may be focused on what we want to do, there are so many choices. There are so many options for one's time today that if you're not always earning it, you're probably not deserving it. And it shouldn't be a surprise when it's not there. And it's much harder to do it all over again than to build at a really solid point where you're comfortable and incrementally add to it. So, Con, it looks like, it's a whole different ball game than it used to be. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, it makes me think the fact that people have choices, Don. People have choices about where they put their time. Time is that one resource that no one of us can get back, and it's priceless from that perspective. And the more we understand that we need to put our time, that gift that we have, towards the most relevant things, that's something that is a very powerful thing. And when you earn that, when you're able to capture that, when you are making yourself relevant to your audience, then they will give you that gift. They will give you that time. I mean, I'm going to give the example of our good friend, Peter Clark here, who is in himself in the space. He has his own Red TV up in Calgary, in Canada, and he is a wonderful friend. And through his own experiences, professional and personal, he has really elevated his understanding of what is relevant and what is important and what matters. Sometimes a good scare gets us into that point where we really filter out the noise and we realize that. Near misses are things that wake us up and put us in a situation where we're truly focusing. And I know very few people that are as inspirational as my friend Peter up there. And he does such an amazing job, Don, just like you do. And he has built his audience from a position of relevance, speaking to people that he believes have a message to say, like you, and have relevance to his audience. But beyond that, how can we continue, even in our conversations every day and the people that we interact in our neighborhoods? It doesn't have to be global, like you or Peter from that perspective, or the work that Carl and I are trying to do to reach a broader audience. Sometimes it's just in your family, in your neighborhood. Are you being relevant to those? I mean, you talk about, I've got a daughter that's now graduating from college. All through those years that my friends complained about their teenage kids, maybe the message wasn't relevant to them. Maybe they didn't take the time to listen to them. And maybe it was one of those things that we have to do to, again, adjust our frequency a little bit to make sure that we're connecting with everybody that we're trying to communicate with. If you have that audience, I mean, when I'm standing up on a stage, Don, I can tell if the audience is engaged or not. I can tell if what I'm saying is hitting the mark or not. You can feel that energy shift. You can feel that connection with people. I mean, the eyeballs are on you. You can see them leaning forward. You can see them hanging from your every word because what you're saying is relevant to them. And I'd like to close my comments on this particular question that you had for me with a little story. My father, he's passed away since, but I was always curious with him because in his world, in his little area back home in Greece, he had a situation, he had a relationship with other people in the neighborhood. And sometimes that relationship was a relationship of financial, where people would buy something, they would owe each other money, they would do favors for each other, and they were constantly had this exchange going on between them. And there was always constantly I owe you this, you owe me that. And it was a very complex situation. And it was always make me scratch my head. And I go, why do you do that? I mean, personally, I hate owing. But his answer just surprised me. He would say to me, son, if I don't owe anybody, nobody's going to be praying for my well-being. He says, because I am relevant to them. It's basically, he was saying, I am relevant to them. They care about me because they are hoping that I will be healthy and well and prosperous so I can give them back what I So that's the kind of mentality that sometimes builds our networks. Again, it's a goofy story, but it shows the power of relevance and interconnectivity that we have for each other.
No, I think it's so valid, and I can align with it so well, because in business, there were a lot of times, that you depended on financing, you depended on vendor credit. And I knew every night I went to sleep, everybody was praying I wake up the next day because I could honor my obligations. And the other thing, and I love that kind of old country approach, is you didn't need a lot of lawyers. You didn't need a lot of documentation. And you had trust and patience. So if I took care of you today, I knew when I needed something or when you had something of value to me, you would return it, right? So it's really about sharing, not taking advantage of. And it was also, hey, people cared about you and that's why they supported you. They didn't support you because they cared about themselves as much. And even if you gave something and never got a return, but it created value for somebody else or happiness. And I think your earlier point about, your daughter and listening to your family and being that person who everybody wanted to hear from, everybody wanted to include in another conversation. So there's a fine line between was this business or was this pleasure? Was this for someone else's benefit primarily and not mine? And it's the people who keep score that are too focused on the score to understand that they should be playing the game. The score will always follow the activity, but looking at the scoreboard is never going to change it. And there is a point where you have a reputation. And at a certain point, that means a lot to you, that people respect you, people honor you, people know you're a person of integrity, and that you'll match that and more. And I think it promotes that activity. So, everything goes towards something or away from something. And you have to be a little bit more long run, a little bit more long term, and not worry, am I getting as much as I should? Because it's really who you become, not how much you make, because money will come and go. But if you build on rock instead of sand, you've got confidence. You've got a belief that this is really where you should be with people like yourself and getting back to relevance. If you're dealing with people you don't relate to, don't identify with, don't respect their principles, and they don't respect yours, you're giving up way too much too fast in the beginning. So, Carl, I know you're focused on many transactional situations. How do you bring the personal into it without getting personal about it?
Well, it's always going to be personal. If you're doing something more than a transaction, and it was interesting listening, to you describe, the relevance of a relationship and so forth. And I was thinking of all the people that I deal with who I'm not relevant to them. At least I'm not important on a large scale. If I have a package delivered to my door by an unnamed major company, if I don't order any more products from them over the next year, they're not going to go out of business. They're might be puzzled somewhere, but that puzzle is probably in an algorithm, not in any particular person's head. They're like, where'd Carl go to? So I haven't seen him in a while. That kind of a conversation is not going to take place because so much of what we do today is dealing with entities and organizations where we're just a number, just an account, and we aren't that important to them. And so there are, people out there that advocate for buy local, go local, find a supplier, somebody that's in your neighborhood where you are more than a number, you are more meaningful to them, and you are therefore relevant to them and their success. And I kind of really loved the story of your dad. That was such a great story. It basically tells people, we talked about having a community around you, and this of people that care and see you as being relevant to them. What are you giving, contributing to your community? And it's not just your business. When you run a business, you have so much impact on people around you because you're hiring people into your business, contractors to work with your business, but you're also buying local materials and goods and services, and that employs even more people. And you're paying taxes. And here in Denver, we're paying taxes for almost everybody, including all of our new friends from across the border. And so you see that you're contributing many, many ways, but a lot of times I don't think we do our own self-analysis of who are we relevant to, why are we relevant to them? And then we may find that a little change here or there would make us more relevant. We create greater benefit to the people around us, we become more valuable to our community. And I think it's a kind of a discernment or a self-reflection that you need to do every now and then, because things do change and you do need to be on top of them rather than, catching up with them at a later time.
Well, I think it also speaks to a lot of people have different interests in the same opportunity. So I may be looking at like, well, I need some financing to build my business. Somebody may be looking at, hey, I just want to get related to this Don guy. I'm not really focused on the money side as much, but I am focused on the personal or the how can we help each other by just being in business together. And usually people have a lot of resources, can afford that. I've had
Don, everybody wants to know you. I mean, that's a given.
well, only because they know I know you and Con and so many other people, because that's another thing is no one by themselves should be or is an island, right? And it's really center of influence now, right? So if you get to know somebody who knows a lot of people you'd like to get to know, that's more leverage, right? That's more ability to say, hey, just entering this club. And I know there's people who join in memberships that are exceedingly expensive. People put $50,000, $100,000 into certain networking groups, but because there's so much activity and people are doing business with people and people are learning from these people. I know like Tony Robbins, he has a program, or maybe still does, that 5 people a year give him $1 million a year. And he's not living with these people, right? He's given them enough time, and he also has everything else. Now, why would someone pay $1 million a year? Well, obviously, it's either through instruction, but mainly influence, right? And if Tony calls somebody up and says, hey, you got to get together with Carl, he's doing something pretty cool, that's a key to a doorway, but you're the one who has to put the key in and turn it. And it's really stretching, and everybody has to stretch to be more relevant. You got to be better, you got to be faster, and you got to be kinder. And just looking at Peter Clark, because he's a new person, I know he probably came in through Con. On his profile he says, be kind out there, media producer, Red TV. Well, you've got a lot of words you can choose. And most people, when they have a lot of real estate on their profile, it's all about what I do, what I can do, what you should do with me, instead of saying just be kind. And I think that goes a long way to the people who are sensitive to that, because no one takes pleasure in seeing someone get beat up. No one gets pleasure out of saying I got 90% to their 10, or they shouldn't. Right? Because, how would you feel on the 10% end? You're not going to continue to go into those types of situations, and being the better person, being the person who says, I've eaten, you go first now. Or, hey, there's only one meal here. I'm not that hungry. Take care of it, right? And take care of yourself. And people know that isn't normal. And you don't want to be normal, because normal and average gets you pretty much what normal and average gets everybody. So why not elevate? And I think that's a key thing to relevancy, is getting that visibility at a higher level of consciousness, but also activity and kindness. Like I always said, when I ever made deals in my store, somebody, a package deal or something, after the person paid, I gave them something extra, never before. Right? Because the deal was done. No one expected something. So when you threw something in, it was something you wanted to do because they're a good customer or because they referred somebody to you. And that just rewards positive quality behavior. And people don't take that extra. Some people don't go the extra mile, don't even go the first mile. And they never know. Here's a new gentleman, Tommaso Mastrocola. Bill Walsh set the standard of performance as the key, and the score will take care of itself. This is dead on, fellas. And the reason why it's dead on, because it works. what we have come up with, Con, Carl, and myself, is based on experience, based on being around people who were a little bit ahead of us, smarter than us in certain ways. And we were smart enough to adopt a lot of what they said, integrate it in what we did. And pretty soon we could become bigger in ourselves because we included other people in it, just like Con referred to his father. One's legacy continues. One memory continues after someone's gone because of something they left behind that someone picked up and continued to leverage and use in the most positive, beneficial ways. So, Con, what do you say?
Well, I'm listening to you and your example about giving that little extra, the delighter, as we call it, after the fact, after the deal was done. The value of that gift was not just the timing of it, but the thoughtfulness in making it relevant to that person. Of all the things that you probably could have given them, knowing you probably picked something that was relevant to them and something that had meaning to them. And that's the big part of it. It's the same thing with our relationships. Think about, you receive a Christmas card and it has a generic, store card, a gift card. Are you gonna receive that with the same sort of level of significance to you as somebody who's taken the time to know you and understand and handpick a gift that is very relevant to you? I mean, how many times, even if it's not the same, somebody gives you a large amount on a gift card, but somebody spends their time to go out and handpick, put together a little gift relevant to you, that resonates with you. That speaks to you. That's very personal. I look around on our comments today and I see the level of agreement, which means that what we're saying is relevant to our audience. It speaks to them. And that's something that I caution people, and you've said it a lot, Don, as well. When we are out here in the social networks, it's very easy to look at that and say, there's a billion people out there. I want to be famous and I want to be known by all of them. Is that what you really want? Or do you want to be able to be very connected to the relevant people that you're going to be able to serve, that you're going to make a difference to, that are the people that are your people, that you're going to be able to connect with in a way that's meaningful? So even though we are broadcasting across multiple channels as we speak right now, we are essentially narrowcasting because we're talking to a very specific part of this audience. Carl is not trying to send his message to people that don't need to hear it. He's trying to connect with the people that will really benefit from what he can offer them. He's trying to help a very specific group of people and hoping that his message is going to land with those. Out of the billion people that we have there, he's looking to find that handful that's really going to be able to benefit from his services. It's the same thing with what you've always done, Don. Right now, we're reaching out into space and saying, okay, where are those people that I can help? And that's what we're trying to do. We're broadcasting at a certain frequency. We're sharing a message. We're sharing our truth. And we're trying to see, who is this relevant to? We're trying to attract those people. We're putting out there that bait, hoping to attract the right fish.
Yeah, so true. And the response we get validates what we believe and reinforces it and allows it to continue. I know, just talking about family, my grandmother, I would always go over Wednesday nights, every Wednesday, to her place, and she'd make a really nice dinner. What was interesting, if I would just say something about something without even knowing it, it would show up at the next dinner. She would always like, oh, he liked this, he's going to get more of this. And, the same thing, like you say, with a customer or a client. If someone says, I've always wanted to buy that, next time I come in, I'm going to do it. I'm thinking, well, there ain't going to be a next time because you're going to get it today. Right. And people like to know that even little things meant something to you that they brought up. Things that you never thought they'd care about or remember. But it's, another way of meeting somebody where they're at, taking care of somebody, because everybody has room for generosity. And you have to include that in your relationships. So the key thing is the whole saying, no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And with that, Peter comes back with, thanks for mentioning kindness. I believe we all become better when amplifying others and showing kindness. We can use our voices as forces for good in business and life. You all demonstrate that. Great conversation, gentlemen. And just saying gentlemen is a kind act, because that's something that's kind of rare today in this world of not being fully with civility, with kindness, respect. You know, one thing about being older, you remember the days when that was just part of life, where people would dress up for simple things, you know, would share things, would take time for people and try to instruct them, you know. And I think too many people got into this rush, don't have time. And everybody has the same amount of time. Again, relevance, what is it doing for you? And at the end of the day, when you go to sleep, are you really proud of yourself? Are you happy with what you were able to do and serve and present? And I think that's so important. Dennis comes back with, be relevant to folks like you are to your favorite relatives, to be an important part of your family connections. And I think Dennis makes a great point, because family is an open word, right? There's blood family, there's family that you created through associations, organizations, and everybody wants to help someone knowing it's worthwhile that they get help, not that you get a return on your investment. And I think return on investment is key, is you're making multiple investments. Some are not financial. Some, you know, people contribute time, people contribute thought. And I think everybody getting better together is a wonderful way of reaching a higher level of success. So, Carl, sounds like we really got into benevolency today.
Well, we could all, benevolence is, I think, a word related to benefit. If not, I'm going to draw a link and call it that. No, I think it is interesting that one of the challenges of today is we get going too fast. We're trying to do too much, and somewhere along the way, either our quality of work or our happiness, our feeling of pride in what we're doing gets diminished. And so one of the things we've been talking about within our cohort, and for those who don't know, Don is a mentor to a cohort that includes myself and Con and Dave Snell, with support and advice of Harvey Tuck and Kelly Steinecke and Beverly Glazier. And those poor people, Don and everybody else, are trying to help Con and I get better. And it's a challenge because we're older people and change is hard for us. But we've been talking about, like who would be the perfect optimal customer, client, whatever, where do we bring the most value? And I think that that's a two-way street, that we want to ask ourselves who's bringing most value to ourselves, and where are we bringing the most value to others, and then start looking for pairing up these two places so that we can be better at what we do. We don't have to be better for everyone. We don't have the time to be the perfect response to everyone else, but where we are at our best, let's do our best to help those people where we bring the most value, the most benefits. And I guess we're into benevolence at that point.
Well, I think that's so important. And, life changes as you get older. And you're in a different position when you're just starting out and you think you know everything and you can't wait to jump in. And as you get more towards the tail end, you start to enjoy living vicariously through others. I'm so excited when my son does something really significant, or my daughter, and I'm fortunate every week I see my son on ESPN, out on the sidelines coaching teams, and he's now an international coach. He coaches the Hungarian national team also. And, he takes it so nicely in so many ways. But, that pride really, sometimes, not sometimes, but most of the time, once you had enough of something, it's so nice to treat somebody to their first time at it. If a grandchild never had ice cream, right? Just seeing what that ice cream cone does to their smile is greater than if someone gave me 100 gallons of it. And I think that makes you a little bit better because time has given you that reference point. And at a certain point, you don't need as much. And more of something for yourself is not as important as the beginning of something for somebody else. And I know even through my businesses, I had people 18, 19, 20 years old coming in, and I look at them now and they're leaders in their industry. And I know I had to have some impact because they always come back to me. They always keep me updated. They share what's new and exciting. I've got a gentleman who actually is doing so well. He lives on a boat, and he does all his work on the boat, and he sails everywhere and does everything. And to me, it's like, wow, I remember this kid. He didn't know up from down when I first met him, and that's encouraging. So there's so many ways of being rewarded if you open your eyes to it. And some people are single focused in their bank balance in something like that, and because of being single focused, they got unbalanced. Their personal life doesn't work out too well. Their family life is challenged. And I think you want to take it all with you. You want to have the best of everything. And patience is important, and allowing somebody to take a break. And I think some people are afraid to slow down. But sometimes you got to refresh yourself. You got to recharge, and you got to get back in the game stronger. So, Con, coming up with 3 minutes to go. I mean, these conversations are so worthwhile because they're unplanned. No one knows what they're going to get and how it's going to be delivered. But if people have the right intentions, they're going to come through like we typically all do. So what's your final thoughts on what we've been talking about?
I want to be like your mentee and live on a boat and kind of do my work from there. I don't know what Carl's talking about age. I'm 23, man. It's just that I've been efficient all this time and I've been working a lot of years through this. But on a serious note, I think you realize the priorities, especially we have the privilege of having we've experienced a lived life, and we've seen a few things, so we can discern the noise with the urgent, purely urgent from the important. And I think that's an important part of what we do. I had, it makes me think of a class that I delivered, it was probably 10 days ago. To a group of leaders, young leaders, emerging leaders. And the conversation was on managing priorities and time. And what the key message that I wanted them to take away from that was an expression that Covey first coined. It's that you have to schedule your priorities before you prioritize your schedule. You have to really take time to understand what's relevant, what is truly important to you, what's going to move the needle for you personally, before you start doing the other stuff. Those are the big rocks that we have to really put on our day planners, on our schedules and things like that. Those are the things that should be the non-negotiables. That important time that feeds our soul, that moves the needle for us personally, those big rocks need to go in first. And then allow the space to be filled with all of the other minor things. Those things will take up their space. But as long as you get your big priorities in first, the things that are truly relevant and important to you, you got to start with that. And when I coach executives, this is the key message, because to your point, it's not about work-life balance. It's about work-life integration. It's about being able and flexible enough to be able to understand what is relevant to me, what is important to me. I need to give myself the same permission that I expect to give myself or ask my family for, to be able to sacrifice a weekend, an evening, to do particular work. I need to be able to give myself the same permission to go watch my kids' ball game, or to be able to take some time for myself, because you know what? I need to breathe. I need to slow down for a minute, and I need to breathe. Those are the things that at the most high performing levels, you need to be able to understand, and you need to be able to intertwine in and out of those things and kind of meld that stuff, because work and life are not the same. Work should fit into your life. And that's the way that we need to operate from that perspective and understand what's truly important and relevant to us. Those are the things that then we can prioritize first, and then the rest will fall into place.
That was perfect. and what you said, because some investments are long term. And I always put family first because I knew if I did my thing, I'd have the benefit for a long time. And you're right. It's easy to say, well, there's a little league game or I can talk to someone on the phone. Well, how important is that person to see you in the stands during a work day? At 3 o'clock saying, well, dad took off early so he could be here. Right. And that adds up. And I think when people understand they're making deposits in their bank account of goodwill with so many people, that isn't just financial. So, Carl, give you the last words.
I think they're going to take issue with Con stating he's 23 when he uses the word day planner instead of dashboard. It suggests maybe he comes from a different era when pen and pencil, were in charge of everything. Yeah. I'm not going to show you mine. Mine's not even that organized. No, I think I think it's very true, and I think perfect is the way to describe it. Is that, as Con stated, you have to prioritize what's important, and everything else will work its way from there. When we fail to prioritize is when we get caught up in a reactive mode, and we're doing everybody else's work for them without taking care of ourselves, and that leaves a
Right.
vacuum or a void that doesn't make life better.
Well, and I think that's also a quality example of leadership, because how you do things is how people around you get approval to do things, right? It says, hey, next week my kid's having his little league game. Is it okay if I take off early? Where some people are sitting there, well, at 7 o'clock, I'm not going to be the first to leave here, right? I want to show that I'm going to be here as long as everybody else. And again, it's short-sighted. Most of it's based on not very good experience. But what's a smile on somebody's face? What's making someone's day special? And I think that's important, because what comes around goes around and continues to support everybody. So with that said, want to thank everybody, especially Con and Carl. This has been a fabulous show. I'm so proud to be involved with such wonderful people who are wonderful people first. And I think that's important. If you're looking to read a book, Con has one. If you're looking for financing, and if you're just looking for advice, right? If you're relevant and aligned, everybody wants to talk to you. Peter says one more thing. Brilliant message, Con. Your health and family, there simply is nothing more important. I believe only age, experience, and wisdom can tame the brain to understand this. Thank you for sharing your time with today, gentlemen. Cheers. Well, Peter, you definitely promoted yourself well today, and we'll reach out to you and would be happy to have you on a show. I know you're into live streaming and broadcasting, so I think that's how we all get better together, is stepping out of the shadows, putting ourselves out there, sharing what we believe in, and why not? So anyways, come back tomorrow. We've got Beverly and myself, and Beverly, if you don't know her, is right up there with the best of everybody on LinkedIn. And I can't be more prouder. So with that, see you later. Come back tomorrow if you can, and we'll do it.